From the studios of KENW on the campus of Eastern New Mexico University, it's You Should Know, featuring the people and events of Eastern New Mexico and West Texas.
Welcome to You Should Know. I'm your host, Evelyn Ledbetter, and today my guest is Senator Greg Nibert. He is District 27. So, Senator, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, I just wanted to do this today and kind of get to know you as a person. We've met a couple of times, but just kind of find out a little bit about you. You actually were raised went in the Clovis area, correct?
Born in Roswell, raised in Clovis, spent 3 years while Dad was going to school at Eastern New Mexico University. So lived right there, and then spent my college years in Albuquerque at UNM, and then law school in California, and then back to Roswell for my law practice.
What was your dad studying at Eastern?
Accounting.
Okay. Kind of, yeah, that was kind of my world too, so for several years. But siblings?
I have one sister, Kim Meeks, and she recently moved from Clovis to Roswell after her husband passed away.
Okay, so have a little bit more family here close by.
Yes.
And you're married. A little bit about that.
Married the young lady that captured my heart in Albuquerque while going to school, Carolyn, and we have 2 children. One is an attorney in Denver, Colorado with Chevron, and the other one, Jeff, is here in Roswell. Jeff has blessed us with a grandson, which Carolyn is at home right now wrestling with Edward, and she takes care of him every day. And our daughter-in-law, Hannah, teaches school right across the street at Sidney Gutierrez Middle School.
So very much a part of this community. I actually saw a picture somewhere along the way of you holding your grandson. I think it was on the house floor, right? I'm not sure, but about a year ago, so I guess it would have been.
When Edward was born, it was March 1st of 2023, and we had a long day that day in House Judiciary. And about 6 o'clock, Judiciary adjourned, and we went down to the floor, and the floor session had already started when we got down. And so I was coming in to take my seat on the House floor. I sat in the front row. I was House Republican Whip. And so my seat was in the front row. So I was walking down to the front row, and I started to sit down, and the speaker said, Representative Nibert, don't sit down. And I'm thinking, what am I in trouble for, And he said, Representative Nibert, at 2:08 p.m., Edward Price Nibert was born, and the proud parents are Jeff and Hannah Nibert, and they flashed his birth picture up on the board of the house, and so that's how I was introduced to the fact that I was now a grandfather.
How fun is that?
And so everybody clapped, and my wife and Representative Zell set that whole thing up to get me, and they got me all right. I was speechless.
Did they get a tear out of you on camera?
They probably did. They caught me absolutely dumbfounded. Yeah, I'm a grandfather. But so when the session started in January, Jeff and Hannah and Edward came up for the opening day. And I got the Speaker Martinez to hold Edward on his speaker's desk and get a picture with him, since Speaker Martinez had introduced Edward to me. So we got a family picture with the speaker there, and the speaker was real happy to do that. And I was elated that he would take the time and effort to honor us that way.
Your grandson will think that that's the norm for all the little ones and how they're introduced to the world is like that.
Yeah. Well, he made a big splash. Everybody just was overwhelmed and clapping, when it was announced, and then everybody came up and congratulated me. And it was our first grandchild and maybe our only grandchild.
You never know.
The way things are going. So,
you never know.
So we're just very happy to have Edward on board, and
that's cool.
His grandmother is like I said, taking care of him every day, and she loves every minute of it.
Very nice, very nice. That's a cool thing. Obviously, Roswell's been a good spot for you. You've been after you did your undergrad. You said there at UNM. This was kind of interesting: economics, political science, and biology. Right? Do I have that right?
You had it right. I always thought I wanted to be a doctor, and then chemistry kind of decided that I was not going to be a doctor. So I had plenty of hours, and I liked biology, so I had a minor in biology and then a double major in economics and political science.
Okay.
And then went on to law school.
So truly, it wasn't your calling to go into the legal field from the beginning. You were going to go to be a medical doctor instead.
Well, I'd always had that thought in mind. There were about 8 of us who graduated from Clovis High, and we were all thinking about being doctors, and a couple of us didn't make it, but ironically, 6 of them are medical doctors. And so Clovis High produced in our class a number of medical doctors, and then we had some other research scientists that went on, and so it was pretty competitive. But I found that chemistry was not
your best,
my favorite subject, and it kind of separated me from those that were proceeding in that direction.
Not your best friend by any means, right?
that was not my best friend.
Well, and this is interesting. So, you've got a Juris Doctorate, so you wound up with a doctorate just in a different field. But you went to Pepperdine. Which campus in Irving?
No, it was in Malibu.
Irvine. Okay.
The law school. I think 2 years before I got there, the campus had moved to Malibu. The law school moved from basically downtown Los Angeles in the Watts area to the new campus in Malibu. And it was a great place to go to school.
What drew you to go to school in California versus, I mean, that's obviously quite a ways from Clovis, but...
Well, a couple things. I got into a number of schools and thinking that, I could talk to the deans. I called each of the schools, and the only dean that would talk to me was Ron Phillips, the dean at Pepperdine. And he told me a little bit about the school and how his vision for growing that school and trying to become nationally competitive. And so basically it was Ron Phillips who convinced me that Pepperdine was the place to go. And it worked out very well for me.
Okay.
I was able to do very well in school, and it opened doors, and it allowed me to not only get a law degree, but to see another part of the world and get introduced to people who I probably wouldn't have been introduced to had I gone to a school that was closer to home.
Sure, because you probably typically you've made a whole new group of friends when you go away from home, and everywhere your teachers, your whole environment changes. Even when you're 300 miles away from home or a couple of hundred, but that many, the maturity really happens.
Well, it was neat. California being a fairly liberal place, those were the days when Ronald Reagan was there, and so Ed Meese came to the campus, and the students got to interact with Edwin Meese, who was, I believe, Attorney General of the United States at the time in the Reagan administration, and see other high-profile national leaders come onto campus and interact with them and get their perspective on world events, and it really was a good opportunity for me.
Well, and then you graduated law school in 1983, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so then at that point, you came back to Roswell and went to work for the Hinkle law firm, right?
Yes. Actually, before I went to law school, one of my Sunday school teachers, Maureen Reynolds, told me, "Greg, you're going to law school. You need to call Lewis Cox. He used to be a representative in Clovis, and he's now with this law firm in Roswell. And you need to call him to get a job." So before I ever went to California to go to law school, I came to Roswell to interview with Lewis Cox for a job. And he told me that I was getting the cart before the horse. and so we talked a little bit about law school, and he said, "Well, get your first semester under your belt. If you do well, call me back and come down to Roswell in December, and we'll talk about whether we have a position for you or not." So I went through that first semester. It was very grueling, but at the end of the day, did very well, and went to Roswell and sat down with Lewis Cox and some of the other attorneys, and they told me a little bit about their practice, and they offered me a summer internship, and I accepted that. So I worked at the law firm that summer, and then they asked me to come back the next summer, and then they asked me to come back after I graduated from law school. So it's been my home, the only place I really ever worked professionally. So it's been a good career, and probably on the downside of that career, but it has certainly been a joy to work with the people I worked with, do the type of work I wanted to do. I never had any desire to go into a courtroom and have a litigation practice.
Right.
I always wanted to do resource work, and so doing the oil and gas work has been fulfilling to me. Probably boring to most people, but I enjoy history. I enjoy seeing the records and seeing how, frankly, our part of the state developed. And you get that when you're examining property records.
Sure.
In the county courthouse.
I worked at a law office when I was going to college. And so it was actually an abstract. They had an abstract office and the law office. And so I worked with real estate transactions a lot, and we'd go to that courthouse and pull those big books off and make copies of, old-time copy paper machines and go back. But reading those abstracts was just super interesting to me. And like you said, the history and things you get from that.
Yeah, I've done a number of title opinions in the state that deal with some very interesting property. I did one in downtown Roswell, ironically, where Pat Garrett had owned the property at one time, and so you learned a little bit about that history. I did the title opinion on Vermeil Park Ranch up by Raton, and just seeing how a big piece of property like that, traded hands, not very often, but it traded hands a few times, and the movie stars from California that came out there in the 20s and 30s to spend a summer. And it was really interesting to see the records regarding that activity. And then, of course, the oil that was discovered in Lee County and what that brought about here in southeast New Mexico.
Right. And that typically is the majority of what you practice. You do a lot of oil and gas work, more on the real estate side versus not the litigation, like you said.
Right. Primarily oil and gas title work, some oil and gas contract work, and in my past did a lot of administrative work, fighting the BLM and the Department of Interior on a variety of issues, primarily. But
sure. So you've actually you served in the New Mexico House of Representatives from 2016 or 17?
I was elected in 2016 at the general election, and so I was sworn into office on January 1st of 2017.
Okay. And then actually wound up being minority whip, correct, for the House? And so when Senator Engel chose not to complete his full his term, you were actually appointed by the. Let me see if this is how it works. So all the counties in District 27. So you've got Curry, Roosevelt, DeBaca, Chavis, and Lee. So the 5 counties can be submitted to the commissioners of each of those counties, correct?
The 5 county commissions could nominate someone to be appointed by the governor. And so we went through a process in the 5 counties, and the 5 counties met, the county commissions, and 3 of the counties appointed or nominated me. Roosevelt County nominated a gentleman from Roosevelt County, and Lee County nominated a person from Lee County. And so those 3 names went to the governor, and she selected me.
So tell me, what was the incentive to change from the House to the Senate?
Well, several things. Number one, I've been talking to Senator Engel for a while about the future political plan, his plan specifically, and had shown some interest. The big difference is representatives run every 2 years. So basically, the first day of your next election campaign is the day after the election day. So you're
elected and then you're campaigning.
Yes, you're continually running for office. So having a 4-year term versus a 2-year term has a lot of appeal for a lot of people. So you see a lot of people moving from the House to the Senate, but you rarely find somebody moving from the Senate to the House. And part of that's because of the 4-year term. The second thing is the Senate's composed of 42 members. The House is composed of 70 members. So the dynamics within the body are quite a bit different. Part of that's due to the length of the term. Part of that's the size. And then I would say thirdly, probably the age. There's more turnover on the House side traditionally. There's more turnover, more new people that be brought in every year. The Senate traditionally has been more stable, as is evident with Senator Engel being there 39 years.
Right.
So there's a little more stability, and just looking at my personality and how I have been able to operate, my personality is more attuned to the Senate, which is a more, in my words, a deliberative body. The House is more emotional, where the Senate is more deliberative, is how I would view it. And so I think my personality is such that the deliberative nature of the body itself plays more to my strengths than the emotional side.
On the other side.
Those would be the primary reasons of what attracted me. Certainly, Stuart's retirement, hastened that, and then him patting me on the back and giving me encouragement certainly helped me make that decision to jump into the fray.
I remember talking with Stuart, and he was saying, when he was running in 85, he literally was knocking on the doors. That's how he did, and shook hands and showed up to his first session. And he said, I didn't have pencil, paper, notebooks, nothing. And he said, I was so green. I had to borrow a paper, and they were teasing me about needing my Big Chief and big, thick Crayolas to write with. But
Stuart had never been to the Capitol building before he was elected. And that's pretty remarkable. When Stuart first ran in 1984, I had just purchased a house. Carolyn and I purchased a house in March of 1984, and the first campaign sign that we ever put in our now brand new house was Stuart Ingle for Senate when he first ran. Jimmy Craig, who lived down the street, he'd been involved in politics for some time, as a former probate judge and former county commissioner. He came down, Greg, you need to put this sign in your yard. Okay.
I'll do it.
So that was my claim to fame, is that I put the Stuart Ingle sign in my yard when I first bought the house. And of course, Stuart went on to a very long and distinguished career, and the respect and admiration that his peers had for him was truly evident. We had a day to honor Stuart this past session, and he came up and you know, people think that, you know, we're up there just beating each other up all the time, but you really, when you step back and look at what he's accomplished and how he presented himself, he had the respect and admiration of people on both sides of the aisle, and frankly, it's those relationships that you're able to get some things done. It's those relationships that allow you to have a bigger voice. It's those relationships that allow you to get in and change some things. We don't, in the minority, we don't get our way very often, but when we can influence some things, it may not make it where we want it, but rarely do we get our way. But we can influence the legislation. We can influence the breadth and scope of things. And where we can, we try to pare it down so it does maybe the least damage as possible.
Well, when you're a Republican Party, the Democrats, it's almost like it's over a 2-to-1, almost on the amount of Democrats versus Republicans. You've got to reach across that aisle and just be fair-minded, I think. You've got to compromise. You're not going to get the whole loaf of bread, hopefully a slice or two, but you're not going to get all of it.
We have to, remind our colleagues that the system has to be fair. They have to follow the rules. I've always felt during my tenure in Santa Fe is that even though we've been in the minority and the distinct minority, we have always punched above our weight, so to speak. We have been effective. We have kept some really what I consider very harmful things from seeing the light of day. We had no less than 8 gun bills this past session, and 2 got through. But some of the really egregious ones, we were able to get those shunted. And you hate to say that those are victories, because we didn't get everything we wanted. We didn't want any of them to get through, but 2 did get through. But the other 6 went by the wayside because of a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of discussions, not just in committee, but behind the scenes. And that's how the minority has to operate and work. And we have been successful on that front. The biggest surprise this year, it didn't happen in the Senate, it was the House, and it's that paid family medical bill. Second to last day of the session came up, and the governor was really pushing that, had people on the floor. She herself came down to the House, and 11 Democrats went with the 25 Republicans to defeat that bill 36-34 on this next to last day of the session. And so you celebrate those victories. You try to make sure that you do so in a manner that's respectful, not rub it in their face, because you need those 11 to come back with you next session.
Sure.
And frankly, those 11 who voted with the Republicans, they're in tough primaries right now. They are being punished for
that.
Their vote. And you know, Ambrose Castellano, Joseph Sanchez, Patty Lundstrom, all of them are feeling the pain of that vote, but they're also recognizing that they have to do what's best for their constituents in their districts and New Mexico, and they held firm.
Well, Senator, we're kind of running short on time, but it seems like we just got started. But we're very fortunate to have the legislators we have on the eastern side of the state. And really appreciate all of the hard work that you do for us and on our behalf when you go to Santa Fe, because we know it's not a high-paying job at all. Actually, zero. But Senator, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Definitely. We hope to visit with you again. And to all of you out there, thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Cheers.